I want to encourage young people around the world to get in the fight. Get in the fight. We are not going to accomplish what it is we want to see in this world if we simply sit on the sideline and expect for someone else to change it for us.
My general feelings, I think, at the moment is optimism. I'm very hopeful. I'm very excited about how young people are mobilizing across the world. I mean, today, as we speak, there are young Nigerians protesting across the country against police brutality here, which is really interesting, obviously, because I think a lot of the resurgence we saw in protests this year has come off the back of George Floyd being killed. And it's just interesting to see the way that some of the movement has taken on life of its own in different countries. But it gives me a lot of hope. I think I like seeing that people are making their anger really productive and are organizing and mobilizing in this way. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm very actually optimistic, even though some political situations might look a bit bleak.
No, that's so very true. I also feel at times optimistic about the current state of affairs. But I do think that I feel optimistic in the sense that young people, everyday Americans, and everyday people around the world are finally realizing that there is something broken with our ecosystem. It doesn't make sense that Black folks are experiencing the same type of violence worldwide that is indicative of really institutionalized racism that we haven't fully addressed, especially here in the US. And so I'm excited to see that it's just not Black people calling out the racist systems, but there are our white allies, our Asian allies that are finally stepping up and speaking out, because we really need everyone at the table in order for us to find the solutions for racial justice, not just here in America, but around the world.
During the pandemic, you see a lot of young people standing up to the challenge and redefining leadership, making change. I mean, trying to change circumstances of their people. And that is something that gives me hope for the future, telling me that yes, the future looks bright for the world, the future looks bright for Africa, and the future looks bright especially for all countries in the global south.
I believe that there is a revolution taking place the world over, whether it be for whatever social issues that are happening that are specific to different countries and region. When we turn on the television, we see the faces of young individuals who are marching and rallying in the streets and fighting for a cause for the way we would like to see our countries and the world over being run. I'm optimistic. I see a lot of young people like myself and the millions of other young people around the world who are fighting the cause. And I hope that these kinds of conversations, when it goes out there, encourage more young people to join the fight.
I would say to the politicians and elected officials who are trying to engage young people authentically is that, you can either be a bridge or a barrier, right? You can be a bridge for young people being involved in the political process, having their voices heard, being involved in creating solutions for change, or you can be a barrier, actually preventing them from having an active role. And I think if you don't be a bridge, right, young people are already doing the work and they will move you out of the way. We've already seen examples of that, where young people are no longer waiting for permission to be engaged. But I do think that there's something very important about intergenerational dialogue, about us constantly learning from each other to create the world that looks very different than now, right? A world that is more inclusive, that celebrates all of our differences. And at the same time, I think it's really important to not just have young people sharing their thoughts and ideas without actually sharing power with them and allowing them to curate and implement and to evaluate the same solutions that we're putting into practice. So I think real change happens when we share power with those who lack access, who lack privilege, while at the same time ensuring that their voices are just as powerful as those in positions of power.
I believe that right now is a perfect time for nations around the world to make tough, radical changes, particularly in this environment of COVID-19. There are no excuse that any world leader or anyone can use as to why something cannot or is not being done.
My advice for political leaders will be to just stop talking the talk and actually walk the walk when it comes to them actually wanting to engage young people in politics. And it can't just be paying lip service to this whole getting young people involved. We have to actually be intentional about making those steps, and whether that is from actually making sure that young people are involved in the decision-making process, but that young people everywhere can be involved in the decision-making process, and that has to include our diaspora.
There is the need to deal with issues of unemployment and unemployment, especially in the global south, or let me just say Africa, and provide young people with quality training and build their capacity, skills to become a force for community development and nation building.
Young people have always been at the forefront of change through any moment in history at every section of the globe. Young people have organized marches, they have led armies, they have ran for office, they have fundraised, they have elevated issues to the national and global stage. And so when I also oftentimes tell young people is that there's really no place and space that doesn't require or need the voices of young people, need the passion, the energy. And oftentimes young people are able to look at issues through a lens that isn't politically driven, but one that is rooted in moral, the moral righteousness of both the moment, but also the historical context. And so I think for young people who are trying to figure out how to get involved, I would say, one is to be your authentic self. Never feel like you have to code switch or to show up some way or somehow that isn't a representation of who you are and the issues you care about. And then use those experiences not to define who you are, but really to help add texture to the issues that we're fighting for, and to really help us to add a voice and a face to very real situations, whether we're talking about gun violence, criminal justice reform, or global education. And so, so run for office, fundraise, create your own organization when necessary, or go volunteer. But there's really so much opportunities for young people to be in positions of power that will enable for them to change the world to the place in which we deserve.
But we need to be listened to, and we need to actually be intentional about it, as opposed to everyone just thinking that if you have a couple young people meeting a quota somewhere, it automatically equates to engagement, because a lot of the times it doesn't. And then we just end up being tokens at the table and not actually being listened to.
The older politicians and political leaders must understand and accept the reality. And the reality is simply this: young people are no longer the future of the world or the future of the country. Young people are the now. We are the now. And there are some things that comes with being the now. Being the now means that your voice needs to be heard now, that your ideas and your recommendations need to be accepted now. And the fact of the matter is that young people are not here to take over and throw out all of the older generation who have come before us. No, we simply want to be a part of the process on making our country and our world a better place.